The Data Cloud Diaries, using the Ingestion API for bringing in airline flight data. Part 2. Welcome back to the Data Cloud Diaries, where this is a continuation of where we're going to be trying out the Ingestion API, bringing in data through the API into Data Cloud. And I was looking for some interesting data, and I chose to bring in airline flight data. That is, flight data of airplanes taking off and landing out of airports. So I'm going to show you the API. And in the previous session, I showed you how we set up the Ingestion API connector, how we set up the definition with the YAML, and we carried it all the way through to the DMOs. Now, we needed the YAML file to do that. We kind of jumped a little out of order because it's actually what I'm going to show you today is going to be how I generated the YAML. Then we jumped in and did the Ingestion API, and then finished the code to get the data to work. So I'm going to walk you through the steps of the API and bringing the data into Data Cloud through the API. So here's a public website called Plane Finder, and from this we can actually see all the flights in progress, all the commercial flights in progress around the US. This is public information. And you can actually zoom in and see the flights and even click on them. There's a FedEx flight. We can just randomly grab any flights in progress, a Delta. So what you can do is you can see flights in progress. This is public information. Now what I wanted to do is to find a way to feed this into Data Cloud. And so I'm going to show you the API I selected for this exercise. On the Rapid API platform, it's a nice platform for getting a whole bunch of APIs. It allowed me to look at the different endpoints, see the particular mocks and stubs, and be able to look at this. And it allowed me to see and test the APIs. So I chose this one, and the pricing was reasonable. So you can also look at Aero Databox, and it gave you the flight information. So this information is very helpful, and it's a straight API. Now the first part of an integration for me is always making sure that the APIs work. So here I am in Postman. I've got a sample API. It's calling data for flights in and out of Phoenix, and I'm going to hit send. So now I've gotten a reasonable amount of data. Now I narrow the date range so I can have a nice reasonable size payload that's not too huge. So I've got a 10-minute range of flights, and I've been able to narrow this to where I've got less than, about 800 lines of sample JSON. And that's an important place to be. Now here is VS Code, which we're all used to using for Salesforce, but I've plugged it in to run C# because it needs to run outside of Salesforce to be able to do the logic outside and push the data in. When making calls to JSON and REST calls, doing the serialization is an important aspect. I like, wherever possible, and the JSON is straightforward, to use what I call concrete classes. Then I can use single line serializations. So I'm going to show that to you. Here is a class, which I'll be explaining shortly, but what I want to show you is that if you have concrete structures, I'm going to be making calls. This is calling the API, but I can use a standard JSON convert with a deserialize. So with one line of code, I can take a large set of JSON and automatically map it to C# objects. So we're going to look at this flight info. So this flight info is a structure that then contains flights, which then contains sub-elements. The question is, how did I get this? And I'm going to show you how we go from this JSON to those C# structures. Typically, I found previous websites that'll do conversions, or you do them by hand. But in today's day and age, with ChatGPT, I'm going to show you an easy way to do it. So what I'm going to do is highlight the JSON, and I'm going to bring up my ChatGPT window and show you how easy it is. So here is my ChatGPT, and I can just go, I am working in C# and serializing from JSON. Can you give me the C# classes for this payload. And then I'll show you how you just paste in the payload. And so this is how quick and easy you can give it all this big payload. And you'll see the ChatGPT. Now, normally there'd be websites, or I could do it myself. But this way I can save myself time. And right there, I'm already getting my structures. So you'll see I'm getting the C# classes for this. Now, it's not always perfect. And what I'm going to do is, this is grouping them all into one class. And I like them in separate classes. So I'm going to show you that I've taken this. And we have my flight info, which has, and I've created my header classes. And these are and I've made these nullable because I started getting nullable warnings in C#. But basically, this is the list of arrivals, a separate class for the call signs. We got flight details, aircraft, airlines, and airport. So all of this was generated initially by ChatGPT. And then what I did was I took a moment and converted it into C#. So let's take a look through this. The classes, I have a main where I'm going to load configs for my settings, and I'm going to call arrow call. Now we're going to go into my arrow subfolder and go into arrow call. And what we're going to be doing is, we'll start right here, is I'm going to define my source airport. And this way I can use this airport object. I'm saying Phoenix. I'm defining the start time and asking for a 10-minute window. Then what I'm doing is I'm calling asynchronously the await get flights by airport. We'll be going into these details. So I am now getting my flights per airport. So where I'm passing in Phoenix with a 10-minute window. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert into Data Cloud. So get the flights, insert into Data Cloud. What we're going to do is getting the flights is pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do is convert my date times into a special date string format that is used. So this is a format up here that I have defined. This is the date format used by the API. And then what I'm going to do is read my URLs, and I'm going to make my call. When I'm done, I'm going to deserialize, which means I'm going to, as I talked about, I'm going to bring it back into the stream. And then from here, I'm going to convert it into my flattener. So going into Data Cloud, this is the secret. What we did is we had all of these separate objects, and I'm going to flatten that data to bring into Data Cloud. So what I did is, under Data Cloud, what I did is I created a flattened object right here. So this object is the flattened version, which has all the fields necessary. And then it has a nice toString for debugging. And I wrote a little converter. So this is a handwritten converter. What it will do is it will loop through the list of the flight infos and flatten it. So here's the for each. And what it's going to do is it's going to flatten to my airport traffic object, populating the values. And then a key element for going into Data Cloud is you needed a date time. So I'm picking a specific date time for the field that's going to be the dead time. And then adding a primary key. So I chose the airport, ICO, ITA, departure arrival, the call sign of the airport, and the key time that I've chosen. So that becomes the key. So this converter class will convert the deep structure of aircrafts, airlines, airports, flights, and times to a flat airport traffic object. So coming back to my arrow call, we're going to then flatten this with the airport traffic controller. And then what we're going to, so that is now, it's returning me the flattened object out of get flights by airport. So now I have my data has been returned. I have my flights. I've flattened it. And now we're going to go call it into Data Cloud. And so here is where we had called arrow initially. Just a simple request, passing in the API key, and using an await to send it asynchronously. Here is how we're loading it into Data Cloud. And I have to do an exchange. So we're going to go take a look in Data Cloud. In Data Cloud, you have to authenticate with Salesforce. Then what you need to do is do an exchange where you exchange that token with for a different Data Cloud specific token. And I've explained this in a previous video. So what I have right here is to call data, insert into Data Cloud, is I'm going to check to see if I don't already have a token. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a Data Cloud token in here. I'm going to build the wrapper. I'm going to serialize. And then I'm going to call. Now here is a key element. If you are testing out, you want to send it in with the name of your connector and the name of your object. In my case, they're both airport traffic. So I have airport traffic, airport traffic. When you're in test mode, you want to send actions test to validate your data. So what I did is I validated with an actions test. And then once I got it validated with my payload, I disabled it. And now the only header you need is your access token and the send async. So this is sending my data to Data Cloud. Now I think the key exchange is important. So I have this class, the Salesforce auth utility, where I call get an access token. So first it gets a Salesforce access token. And then here it exchanges it for a Data Cloud token. And so first we're going to get a Salesforce access token. I'm using, in this case for my demo code, I'm using username and password. I'm passing in the client ID and the client secret. Then I'm getting the response. And then what I'm reading is I'm deserializing it. I have created my own payload for the DC auth token and the Salesforce auth token. So with one line of code, I can deserialize my response. And then what I do is then I pass out the Salesforce access token, and then we're going to go look at the exchange. So if we go into the exchange, we're going to then read the grant type, the subject type, and this is what you need in order to do the token exchange. And then we're going to hit the endpoint that comes back from Salesforce. We're going to add services A360 token, and what we're going to do is we're going to exchange this. So we're taking one PAT1 token for Salesforce and exchanging it for a Data Cloud specific token. So this code right here allows me to do, this will allow me to authenticate. Okay. So now, going back to the top level, we're going to walk through it. So we have an arrow main calling setup, which is reading my configs, a run statement. Let's go to my arrow call. And in our run, what we're going to do is request Phoenix's data from the API. And now we're going to have that data right here in this list. Then what we're going to do is we're going to insert it into Data Cloud. And we're going to go take a look one more time at insert into Data Cloud, where we're going to do the authentication, build our wrapper. We're going to post. We're going to serialize, send to the Data Cloud with the base URL, the ingest, sources, connector name, object name. And a key thing is making sure you know your connector name and your object name. Now one more thing I want to show you is we've created this flattened structure here, and I needed YAML in the previous video. So I can highlight all of this. And we're going to go back to, we're going to ask ChatGPT for a little bit of time saving. And we're going to say, I have a C# structure for a JSON payload. Can you convert it YAML file? And then we paste it in. Let's stop. Let's send the message. And what this is doing is going to help me from having built the YAML myself. Now I refined my request because I wasn't getting what I was looking for with the please build the open API spec. And now you'll see that it's building the spec coming out. And what I can do is fine tune this spec by hand, and this becomes the seed for my YAML. So here is my YAML right here. And this is help with generated. Let's see this in action. So I'm in Data Cloud. I go to Data Explorer. We're going to go to the SteveTechArc. We're going to go to my actual data lake object. We're going to choose airport traffic. This is the one that I got working, and my first one. And what we're going to do is I have data right here, which is going to be flights coming in and out, and we're going to be loading more data. So this is arrival on 4/5, 4/4, and 4/5. So what we're going to do is we're going to load different data in here on a different date. So all I have to do is go to my arrow, my loader, and go to the top. And we're going to change, instead of 4/4 at 2020, we're going to go to 12 December 1st at the same time. So we're going to be looking for data from December 1st, and we're going to pull this from Phoenix on December 1st. So we're going to save, and now we're going to run. And what we're going to be looking, and we're going to run it as C#. And now you'll see the data is coming across, 19 records found. And this is the Data Cloud result, which is that it's been accepted. What we're going to do is take a look in Data Cloud, the Data Explorer, and we're going to see when that comes through. So we had our data stream, and we had 10 records. We're going to give it a moment. It runs asynchronously for these 10 records to include the additional. I'm going to do a refresh, and I'm just going to pause in a few minutes, and I'll tell you how long it took. It's taken a few minutes, but now you'll see if I refresh the data stream, I went from 10 records to 29. We're going to go to the Data Explorer. We're going to go and choose, and I have it mapped all the way to the data model object. And we're going to go to airport traffic, and you'll see we have the additional data. And as I mentioned, the dates that we were looking at before were in October. So let's take a quick look. December. So we were looking at 12/1/20. So December 1st at about 8 p.m. And you'll notice that we have this data here, the arrivals record at 12/1. So these are the data that's been coming in from our feed. So today was a bit longer of a session. I showed you how we took the Postman, got the payload, and then I was able to convert that into the C# classes that I could use for quick deserialization. And then I also built a flattened class to go into Data Cloud. And then you saw that I built the YAML from the flattened class and used that actually in last video to create the ingestion API. And then it was a matter of just calling the API with the Arrow Data API to get the data, doing the mapping between the serialization and the mappings, and then calling the Data Cloud, but remembering to do the key exchange. And we saw the data flow with a new date all the way into Data Cloud and get mapped into the DMOs, the data model objects. We're going to keep digging into this and show more and more details on this ingestion API. Hope this helps. So keep flying higher. Join me again, same bat time, same bat channel. Subscribe to YouTube, SteveTechArc, and www.stevetecharc.com, and have a great day.